What's up, Elevate fam? We're here with our Doc Talks talk, and we Doc Talks
Talk.
talk to talk. We are talking about sleep today, and how to enhance your ability to sleep and what to look for if you are not sleeping well. I guess right off the bat, we're getting into importance of sleep and benefits of sleep. A lot of people know these things, but we're going to go into what's really driving us to talk about this stuff, because a lot of patients will come in, and if we dive deep enough into their history and we see this as a problem, it can make progression of injury, progression of pain, all of this stuff move along a lot faster, and it can solve other problems, right? So if you have an alertness problem, if you're crashing, these are benefits that you can get from a proper night's sleep, is trying to get these alert times that you're actually able to make decisions, overcome complicated questions. Those things are very tied to your ability to sleep, and then having crashes in the afternoon, so having sustained lasting energy. If you have quality sleep, then you're able to maintain those things for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and consider what implications that could have on things like your job performance. If you're not sleeping well and you don't have that alertness, you're not going to be as productive at work. Think from one of the most important things we want aside from you feeling good is you staying alive. And think about car accidents and how many times people, especially if they're going for longer drives at night, fall asleep at the wheel. Well, could it be that because you don't have that alertness and you're not sleeping well, that makes you more predisposed to falling asleep when you ought not be falling asleep? So it's extremely important. This is probably one of the most important things, but also one of the things people touch last when it comes to taking care of your health.
Yeah, it's not the real cool thing to think about. Everyone wants a pill or the most amazing plan of all time. If you can nail sleep, there's going to be a lot better things happening in your life all around. I mean, sleep it's one of the most important things, just like what Zach was saying. It's one of the most important things in every aspect of our life. Relationships, financial, all that stuff, all requires your ability to make decisions and function. So take this seriously, take it to heart if you know that you're someone that doesn't have good quality sleep. Another thing that we're really passionate about is working out here. Obviously, we have a gym and we have a clinic attached, and we speak to both sides of fitness and health. Your ability to recover, very, very correlative to how much you can sleep. If you're getting really broken up sleep, 2 hours a night, multiple breakups in the middle of the night, yeah, you're gonna have really crappy sleep, but your muscles will not feel like they're ready to go for another workout very soon. It's gonna take quite a while.
Yeah, and that's because your recovery from a challenging workout happens while you sleep. That's when muscle building happens, because there's lots of good hormones that your body releases to help repair the areas that you intentionally damage so they can grow. So if you're not getting adequate sleep, that can be a problem. Which leads us into the thing that a lot of people come to see Kyle and I for, pain. The research linking sleep to pain is not, if you're not sleeping well, it may increase your chances of pain. No, this is like causal. This is really intense stuff. Some of the research that I've read on sleep shows that if you are not sleeping well, if you are in pain already, your bouts of pain will be longer, like causal. If you don't have pain, you are at a higher risk of developing a painful incident within the next year. And it's mind-blowing. And also, too, I think the third thing in the studies that I've read is you are more likely to have pain across multiple areas if you are not getting good sleep. And we'll talk about what good sleep is and how you can get your sleep on fleek. But it just goes to show, like, these are all of the things that are linked to sleeping well or not sleeping well.
Yeah, and to touch on the pain aspect, our brain has a lot of decisions that it needs to make, and the more that we don't have the ability to make decisions, our body will just shoot out decisions of, okay, well, it's painful. It's one of the easiest things for our brain to just kind of shoot out and say, I don't really know what information my body's trying to tell me right now because I'm too tired to deal with it. My stress is through the roof, and I don't have enough decisions to last me throughout the day because I just don't have the sleep or the energy to do it. So it's going to cause pain. So it's more. It can be causal to all these different types of pain in different areas, but it has to do with a lot of decisions that our body's able to make as well, and our brain can actually function with more sleep and make better decisions and create less signaling of pain. So a little bit more of the scary things that can happen, or just bad things that can happen with a lack of sleep. I'll let you speak more about the CBD stuff. I'll talk a little bit more about immunity. If we don't get the sleep that we need, then we can start seeing our bodies able to fight off germs, be able to fight off syndromes and disorders and disease start to go down pretty quickly. My wife works in endocrine disorders, and she works with patients that have a really hard time finding really, really good sleep because of what Zach was talking about, hormones and the distribution of hormones at certain times and ratios. That can lead to more types of things like autoimmune disorders and other diseases. Zach will talk about CBDs.
Yeah. When you're not sleeping, increased stress throughout the body, there's a constriction of blood vessels, your heart's going to pump faster, lots of different things. So if you are in that state, which is like a stressful state for your cardiovascular system and your heart, that's going to increase your risk of several things cardiovascularly. So there's increased risk of stroke is a prime example of that, heart disease, all from not sleeping. So again, it's really important that you sleep.
So if you haven't kind of caught on in the first couple of minutes how important this is, those are like some really good things that come from sleep, and there's some also really crappy things that come from not having good sleep. Some of the things that we would look at for maybe giving us an idea of if we don't have good sleep. So there's sleep apnea, upper airway resistance syndrome, and some grinding and moving of the jaw throughout the night. These are one of the bigger red flags that we actually have a symptom and a sign of having sleep problems.
Yeah. So let's go into all of the things that if you have this, you may want to consider getting a further workup sleep-wise. So things you wouldn't think about. Let's say you are trying to lose weight and you're having a really hard time with that despite doing some good things diet-wise, you're training your face off. All of that, if you're not sleeping well, and this goes back to some of the immunity and hormone stuff, your body starts to respond differently to blood sugar. And just a few nights of sleep poorly can put you in a pre-diabetic state. So if that's you, you may consider getting sleep checked out. With some of the things that Kyle was talking about, sleep apnea, that's where you go long periods of time throughout the night without breathing. So if your partner tells you that you snore, or you know that you snore, if you wake up frequently throughout the night, and that could be just to go to the bathroom, and I'm talking like 3 or 4 times, if you get night terrors, if you grind your teeth at night, right? Your teeth are ground down and you're making loud noises. That can be a way that your body's trying to open up the airway. Any of those types of symptoms would warrant you getting a sleep study because they could be linked to sleep apnea. Now, maybe you got a sleep study and you're like, well, Zach, I didn't have sleep apnea. I'm good. That's where upper airway resistance comes into play. And this is where, so the difference between apnea versus airway resistance. When you measure apnea, it's a period of 10 seconds going without breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you go 5 seconds? Like that still could be problematic. Yeah, still not good. So that's where upper airway resistance syndrome could be a thing. If you don't feel refreshed when you wake up in the morning, that's usually one of the telltale signs. If you're someone who's actually a bit more in shape, fitness oriented, so a tinier woman is actually like the profile for someone who is at risk for this.
Big hormone issues most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. If you got a small crowded mouth, you've had braces 2 or 3 times and it keeps going back, things like that are things to consider, and I would strongly consider getting a sleep study.
Yeah, that's. I've had multiple talks with the wife about cases just like that. Petite, smaller person that is really struggling with that. The glucose regulation, the sugars in your body, your brain gets starved to the point where it'll wake you up and you're almost in like this panic mode.
Mm-hmm.
So, being able to sleep through the night, having the ability to create hormones that get blood sugars in the right areas and the right ratios, very, very important. It has to be diagnosed correctly and has to be handled appropriately. Just because one test says it's not, try to seek out more and more information if you feel like you're having any of the symptoms that we've been kind of talking about a little bit. Keep on looking for those answers from your providers, because it can make a big difference in your overall quality of life. So next, moving into a sleep environment that's going to be hopefully a little bit more suitable for a full night of sleep. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we feel safe. We want to feel like we're in a safe position. So most of the time, bringing curtains, having something that is actually, even if it's a light sheet, more pillows, all of these things can create this kind of cave type mentality or a little bit of safety. So use those to give you a little bit more of that being able to relax into those sleeping environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, it's funny you mentioned the safety thing, because there was a study done a couple of years ago where they measured people's brain activity when they're sleeping in an unfamiliar location.
Hotels, terrible.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a thing in those scenarios, only half of your brain sleeps at a time because you're trying to stay alert. So if you think back to, caveman days, if you're in an unfamiliar area and you don't know what threats are around you, you want to have some degree of vigilance.
Yeah.
So creating an environment such as Kyle's talking about can be a way to breed that familiarity, so you do feel safer when you sleep.
You make those routine things that you do, even and if we speak about creating the environment, you can make that replicated at different areas. So if you're someone that travels all the time, maybe you have the same routine of your hotel set up this, and this. Now you know spatially where everything is at throughout the night. Boom, you hit that sleep button pretty good. So making those things repeatable, very, very important. We talked about cool temperatures. It actually makes you feel kind of like you need to cocoon a little bit too. I think that's a very big it's a big help for regulating temperatures and getting your body to feel like it needs to kind of drop down and go to sleep and huddle into a smaller area. That's how I interpret the cold temperatures.
So when you're sleeping, your body temperature naturally dives downward. And at certain points in time, actually like during REM sleep, which is where you get the rapid eye movement, that's where you dream and things like that, your temperature is controlled by the outside environment. So you want to ensure that it stays cool in order to keep you in that deeper state of sleep. And most of the research recommends between 62 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit for your room at night. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, one, that's really cold, so that's where actually covering up is good, but then it's like, does that defeat the purpose? Well, actually, the way that your body determines that temperature is through breathing. So that's why it's important to actually have the environment be cooler, and you can still cover up and get the same benefits. But I also realize that you're probably thinking, gosh, my electric bill is now going to be $400 a night. If that's the case, and you're concerned about that, it's not as good as having a cool temp, but you can get a device called a chili pad, which you put underneath your sheets, and that can also help keep you cooled off. And we'll link that in the blog post, which will be on elevatesph.com/sleep, so check that out.
To add to that, I've had a medical friend. He's a doc in Arkansas, and he speaks very, very highly about those. Someone that's very high up in understanding sleep, health, all that, he is a very big proponent of this. Because he would wake up drenched, his wife would be completely fine, completely normal, because she didn't have the same temperature regulation that he did. So big thing to be able to be individual between one person on this side of the bed, one person on that side of the bed. You can make those differences with that chili pad. It can be very helpful for creating some equality, and so one person's not suffering and getting all the sleep, and the other is sleeping peacefully.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had a patient once who she hadn't slept through the night in years and was in long-standing pain, and literally the only change that I made was changing the room temperature. Was able to sleep through the night for the first time, because it would be like 76.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, how
I
do
think you just saw pain just kind of cascade down.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool.
I mean, it's not the big sexy change. Sometimes it's going back to the really, really good sound basics. Those are very important for some of these. Looking at electronics, you've probably seen a lot of blue screen identifiers and things that 30 minutes in before sleep, we're trying to get our screen time to drop down a lot. So electronics, if we can start shutting some of those things off and getting our body used to having a little bit of low light, so it starts triggering our hormones to say, yep, it's about time to sleep. So it gets us into that routine. Seeing bright lights at night is not the normal for our body. Our body starts saying, oh, well, is the sun out? It can't really respond really, really well to artificial lights compared to natural lights. So making sure that we turn some of those screens and electronics off, so the buzzing and the sounds and all that stuff start to go away, so we get used to getting ready for sleep.
Yep. Now, let's say that you just can't give up scrolling through Instagram. You want it, the only time you can listen to the doc talks is right before bed.
Oh gosh.
Right? How do I get around that? The answer would be a lot of the phones have settings where they can minimize blue light. So if you got like your iPhone, is there any other phone?
I got my Samsung over there.
Yeah, that's why Kyle and I don't get along. No, I'm kidding. But you can change the brightness on your phone to ensure that you're not getting as much light. But then the really cool thing is there's a thing you can do on the iPhone in particular. I'm sure you can do this on the Samsung, called color filters. And I'm going to just click this 3 times and go back to Kansas. But you'll see that my phone is now red. Right? And so essentially what I've done is I've blocked out the blue light so I can still look at my phone. It's not ideal, but I can still look at my phone without issues. And we'll link how to do that. If you're on computer screens, there's a great app called Flux. I don't know if you use Flux.
Oh, yeah.
That's also another way to minimize blue light. And another thing that I've been doing that I really like, especially because I'm a little bit of a tech nerd,
Super
clearly, right? I'm the biggest nerd. I got Google Home, so if you got Google Home or Alexa, because it's not just the screens, it's also the lighting here. So like, it's very bright in this room.
Yep.
You don't want this amount of brightness before you go to bed, and that could be even if you're not on the screens. So actually getting smart lights is a super good way to minimize light overall. So I have a few smart lights in my apartment, and so I'll just say, hey Google, turn the light to amber and at 75%, and it really darkens it. You can still see, but it helps minimize that blue light intake.
And I believe with some of those, you can actually program them too at certain times of the day. It can start having like a dimmable feature to them. So look into some of that stuff. If you want to not have so much on your plate, look for the ones that can be programmed and set and forget. So the more that you can make a routine and a habit out of it, the better. What else do we got? We got trying to get morning sunlight. That, I know you've spoke about that in the past with getting the hormones to start kind of regulating right from the get-go. You want to sync your, it's called a circadian rhythm. You want to sync these rhythms of hormones going up and down as much to the normal to the normal ratios as possible. And we see that morning sunlight is one of those things that triggers it right from the get-go. It can be very, very powerful for getting that stuff started off on the right foot.
Yeah, because your body is creating this contrast. There's certain hormones that are produced at night, which is why we're trying to minimize light during that time period. And those are the exact opposite hormones of the ones that are produced during the day or morning time. So you have cortisol increasing in the morning, melatonin, the pills that you pop to try to help yourself to sleep, that should be lower during the day. Getting morning sunlight can help stimulate your body to have that. And then the same thing with reducing light at night, that will reduce cortisol production and increase melatonin production so you can sleep peacefully.
Stress hormone, can't have that at night. That's a big no-no. Well, this was a debatable topic on this next one because it goes near and dear to me. We tend to have a furry friend in our bed sometimes, and they don't have any regulations. They'll move, they'll shift, they'll do whatever they want throughout the night. And I'm sorry to say that it does affect your sleep, but it's hard for me to say that you can't have a bed with a dog in it or a cat or whatever your animal is. See if you can go no pet. I'm really reluctant for that, but as you can see, it's on our topic.
That's why I made that suggestion.
He was the one that made the topic. I have to say I agree, but it's not something I really enjoy.
Well, and think about this too. If you have even a mild allergy to your pet, and then your pet is right next to you, then you're not going to be able to breathe as well through your nose. You mouth breathe. When you mouth breathe, your tongue sits further back into your mouth, so you're not getting as much air.
Yeah.
That's actually goes into a lot of the problems that we talked about with.
I could definitely speak to the temperature as well. Temperature can be a big one. You have a hot, big dog in the middle or something, or at the edge of your bed. Yeah, it's going to increase your temperature pretty rapidly.
Yeah, but maybe Kyle, in your case, we address curtains, cool temps, electronics, and all
We'll go
that
with
first, and then we'll see if we need to get rid of Zeke out of the bed.
Yeah.
There was a question on Instagram by Dennis Moriarty. What about exercise in the morning versus the evening? I have some thoughts on this actually, because you could argue a few different times. The best time to really exercise, if you go to bed, I believe, and this was like some circadian stuff that I read a few years ago, so please fact check me, but if you wake up at like 7 or 8 a.m. and you go to bed at like 9 p.m., the prime time from a body temperature standpoint is between 5 and 7 p.m. in terms of when to exercise. But if you're going to be doing more power-based stuff, chances are if you want to maximize power output, that's closer to like noon. If you want to stimulate cortisol production like we talked about with morning sunlight, then actually exercising very early in the day can be useful. So you could justify different times throughout the course of the day for various reasons.
Giving your goals.
But you don't want to do intense exercise like a couple hours before bed. Like doing aerobic stuff, that's okay. But like I wouldn't be, pulling the trap bar 400 pounds for triples. And then go to sleep. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No heavy deads, Dennis, at the very end of your day, especially if sleep's coming up very, very soon, just because your body gets pretty ramped up with that. Your intense focus, you start having a lot more intensity, adrenaline, all that stuff. It takes time for that to wear off. So program accordingly and lift accordingly. If you know that you have a early morning and you're about to hit a lift, maybe you make it just a successful lift with lighter weights and kind of getting through it to where you don't have to put so much intensity into it, and you should be a little bit more successful with that. Good question though. Really good question. Let's see. Carb foods at night. We kind of touched on this a little bit with how much sugar we have in our system or the stuff that our brain needs to actually function. If we starve our brain or if we don't have certain energy that goes into our brain, we will wake up looking for it. Our body will kind of alert us to start figuring out how to get the right nutrients to our body. So if we can, we'll have a little bit of a carb at night, and oh, holy smokes! I hope I don't, make the weight watchers offended with that. But it needs to happen, because sleep is going to trump the calories that you need to actually have a good night's sleep. So if you can, try to start remedying with a little bit of a carb or a sugar at night to get your body to hopefully get to a restful state and keep that sustained. And there's another point you were speaking about earlier.
That doesn't give you a license to eat Fruity Loops before bed. So foods that would be good, cherries are like one of the sleep superfoods, and it has to do with some of the vitamins and minerals within cherries, but also you get a nice carbohydrate boost. So grab a handful of cherries, that could be just enough. Having your dinner be a little bit heavier in starches, like rice or things like that. It's the principles of like having a big meal. You know how you get tired and sleepy afterwards. So don't be afraid to have carbs at night for that reason, and that's because it primes your body to sleep, because it helps you fall asleep, and then you get that sustained blood sugar response throughout the night. And
if you can, I think with cherries and some of the other foods that you choose, if you look at what's called the glycemic index, you'd probably want to not have something that's going to be really high, because that might get you a little bit more alert, and something that's going to be like kind of a sugar rush. You'd want something that's a little bit more slow burning carb. So if you have the availability to look up some of those, cherries is probably going to be a good one, but you can do some more research on a little bit lower glycemic foods, but still having the carbs for that slow burn.
Yep.
This is something that I've actually used a bit myself, supplementation for, it was more for, it wasn't just like to get to sleep, it was to have really, really deep sleep. I've used ZMA, zinc, magnesium, and aspartate. It's a really cool combination of minerals that really help with getting you to a deep sleep. I have very vivid dreams, extremely vivid dreams where you really feel like you're in the moment. I think that's a really good sign of having a good restful sleep, or at least having a pretty intense sleep. But the common thing, zinc is, I don't know exactly the correlation, so we'll have to do a little more research on the zinc and the aspartate, but the magnesium is more for just letting your body hopefully have a little bit more relaxed state, and your muscles have a little bit less tone in them, and you can kind of sink into your pillow a little bit easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Disclaimer: if you end up taking magnesium, because I've experimented with ZMA as well. I use Natural Calm magnesium, which is just like a powder. Do not overdose on magnesium, or you will be on the bathroom for a long period of time. So follow whatever they recommend on the labels to take. Do not. This is one of those cases where more isn't necessarily better.
You can't just keep popping those things and trying to get to sleep. It does not work like that.
Yeah.
You will you sorely hurt.
Yeah. Another thing I think we should touch on supplement-wise, because I get asked a lot by patients, can I just take melatonin and life will be good? Well, realize that melatonin is a hormone that your body produces.
Already.
And if you take too much of it, you could potentially negatively affect your own ability to produce that hormone. I'll give you another example. So consider someone who's taking high dose of testosterone.
Yep.
If you take a high dose of testosterone, in order to produce that same amount, you have to take that for the rest of your life. And the reason why is because if you're getting hormones from outside of your body thinks, oh, well, I don't have to work so hard to produce this stuff. Yeah, I'll work on something else. So you want to be careful with doing too much melatonin. If you do take some, the most I would probably take is, I think, 1 milligram or even less. Like some of the supplements that I've recommended to people were like 0.1 milligrams. And that sometimes is just enough to stimulate.
That's just that, stimulate
your ability to sleep, but not overtake your body's own production of melatonin.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to make sure that there's a little bit of a stimulus, and that there's going to be something that kind of helps you get out of the hole, if you will. That's something that can be really helpful for stirring the pot a little bit. Zinc, magnesium, aspartate, and melatonin, those are all pretty common things that people use for sleep aids. The magnesium has a cap on it, and melatonin is something you don't want to be on for a long time because your body will start forgetting how to do its own
for sure.
melatonin release.
Another thing to be cautious about, and this isn't really a supplement, this is a drug, but some people will take Benadryl before they go to sleep. That will definitely knock you out, but you are not going to get into the deeper stages of sleep.
That's big.
So we're very cautious about, well, I can't recommend taking Benadryl, but even if someone is, you definitely want to consult with your physician about that, because generally it's not recommended to do that as a sleep aid because you will fall asleep, but your quality is not going to be that great. That's where potentially exploring some of these supplements could be useful, but also too, even superseding that, are you taking care of some of the sleep environment stuff that we talked about before?
Check all your boxes, make sure you kind of run through these, make a little list of the things that you want to do, and start checking those boxes off consistently, and try to start building a routine. It doesn't happen overnight. You'll start building those, and your body will start reacting to the routine that you start building, and you'll have a little bit better success at creating a good environment for sleep. Do you want to go into any of the breathing?
Yeah, sure. So one of the most important things, we talked a lot about hormones and such with sleep, and we touched briefly on sleep apnea or airway resistance syndrome, but we want to ensure the most important thing that you can focus on when you're sleeping, which, why am I focusing when I'm sleeping, is being able to breathe. Because if you can't get adequate oxygenation during sleep, especially because a lot of your muscles intentionally relax, that's usually what wakes people up. And that can influence hormone production. So it's important to do things to maximize your ability to breathe. So things you can do, we've talked about meditation in the past. So check out some of our previous doc talks, but doing some light meditation where you're focusing on breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, that can be useful. I'll link a couple of my favorite moves that I like to give people to do before we go to bed as well, but just you'll have some good breathing techniques in that regard. But also, too, another thing you want to focus on is tongue posture. Because when you fall asleep, especially if you're someone who snores, which another red flag to think about, the reason why you're snoring is because your tongue is falling back into your throat, and that reduces the airway space. Also, too, if you're soft palate, so where your uvula, if you watch, Looney Tunes back in the day, and you know how you look down the throat and you'd see the thing booming, that's your uvula. If that sits too low, that can also reduce airway space. So 2 things to work on. Pushing your tongue forward and up on the roof of your mouth and stretching that can be really good. So if you say the letter N, you feel where the tip of your tongue goes?
N.
That's where you want the tip of your tongue to be most of the time. So when you say N, hold that position and then try to press the rest of your tongue up to the roof of your mouth, open and close. You'll feel a big stretch in the tongue by doing that oftentimes.
And that just allows the posture to be a little bit more forward, correct?
Yep.
Good.
The other thing, hum, actually. Doing humming can stimulate the muscles that tense up the soft palate where your uvula is. So doing that can increase the tone of those muscles, which can lift the soft palate up, improving the upper airway. And actually, the didgeridoo?
Oh, yeah.
That, like the Australian instrument. There's actually some research showing that practicing the didgeridoo can be a useful way. It can improve sleep numbers and snoring.
I guess that would make sense with all the hard blowing and all the musculature that has to be activated for that.
Yeah, and it will raise the soft palate, which is pretty cool. So you might want to. They're only like $30 on Amazon. I haven't gotten one yet, but I'm going to.
Have you suggested that to a patient?
I have not. It's not my first go-to, but you know what? Next patient who comes in to see me, or maybe if you come in to see one of us for some sleep help
instrument.
You might be getting 30 minutes of didgeridoo a day. Yep. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, if you guys have any more questions, thank you for the question that was already voiced. If you guys have any more, we will answer them in the show notes and into the comments section. So be in tune for next week. We are talking about autoimmunity. I believe.
Autoimmunity, boom.
So we're talking about autoimmunity and its correlative to working out and how you can keep on moving even if you're diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder.
Yep, and if you want links to some of the stuff that we've talked about, you want to see the exercises that will help you fall asleep, you want to get a chili pad, go to elevatesph.com/sleep. It will be there, let's see, today's Wednesday. It will definitely be there starting Monday. So please check that out when you get a chance. It'll be up then, if not sooner.
Cool. See you guys next week.
Take it easy.